Hey there. Well, I've often told the story of how the Swiss Army knife was born. Back in 1890, the Swiss military decided that they wanted a portable knife that could do more than just cut. They wanted one with a screwdriver so soldiers could work on their new Smith-Rubin rifles. They wanted one with a can opener so those soldiers could open their tins of rations. And so they commissioned this multi-tool pocket knife. And in January of 1891, the knife received its official designation, the Model 1890. The problem was there was no one Swiss manufacturer who could meet the required demand or numbers. So the initial contract was given to Wester & Company in Solingen, Germany, over 300 miles from the Swiss border. And in October of 1891, they delivered the initial order of 15,000 knives. Karl Elsner, he did not like that. He did not like that the Swiss military knife was being made in Germany by Germans. So he pulled together Swiss cutlers and formed the Swiss Cutlers Association, and he and others started producing this Model 1890 at the end of 1891 in Switzerland itself. But Karl Elsner, he incurred a lot of losses trying to compete with Wester & Company because they could make the knives at a much lower cost. As a matter of fact, he was facing bankruptcy when he introduced the Swiss Officers and Sports Knife, which really today is known as the Swiss Army knife, around 1897. That knife was very popular. It was never actually used for soldiers in the military, but it was so popular that it sold well and restored him to fiscal health. So here we have a Wester & Company Model 1890, the first manufacturer of the first Swiss Army knife. This example comes from Dave Arnold's amazing collection of Swiss Army knives, and gives us a chance to take a look at one. But before we take a look at the knife, just let me tell you what little I've been able to find out about Wester & Company. I believe it's one and the same as Isaac Wester & Company in Solingen, Germany, and they were in business from 1820 up through this time. They produced a lot of swords. From what I've been able to read, they made swords for the German infantry, the Swiss Army, and both the north and south sides in the U.S. Civil War, which is pretty amazing. They made cavalry sables for the Civil War in the U.S. for both north and south. Apparently, when the U.S. manufacturers couldn't meet the demand there, they used German swords. So here you can see, this has the typical, if these knives are typical at all, black scales. This is blackened oak. Later I've heard it was ebony wood, but I've never seen one myself with a closed grain structure that's tight enough that I would call ebony. These all look like the oak to me that has been soaked in an oil. I've read rapeseed oil to give them this dark color and to preserve them. So here we can see the it's just called control stamp before 1915. So this is the first type control stamp. It was just a little simple cross. And that was used on every official Swiss military knife until 1915, when it did change to one that has a WK in it that stands for Waffen Control. So I'd like to compare this knife to another one that I have on hand, which is my own Model 1890 from Larache AC, or Larache & Company, also referred to as L+C, based on the tank stamp. And so I like to weigh these knives against one another and measure them just kind of for posterity's sake, kind of keep a little video catalog of their stats. The Wester & Company is 136 grams, which is about 4.8 ounces. My L&C is 137 grams, which also is about 4.8 ounces. So they're within a gram of each other in weight, which is pretty remarkable because there's often a lot of variation in weight, as I've seen. The knives are handmade. All the parts were made by different cutlers, so you can expect that. I did also measure them with my micrometer. The Wester & Company was just a hair shy of 100 millimeters, which is what they are intended to be, and the L+C is just a hair over 100 millimeters. So let's just compare the tools. We'll start with the blade. We'll try to keep the Wester & Company on the left. Kind of hard to compare the blades on these two examples because they're both pretty wasted from years of sharpening. But one thing you can see right away is the big difference in the nail nicks. And let's look at this tang stamp on this Western company, because this is new to us. You can see it says Wester and Co., kind of in a curved line above Zollingen. And on the back is something very interesting. A couple of German words I won't even attempt to pronounce, but they translate into legally protected. So it's like a patent designation or something. These knives had spear point blades. That's one way you can always tell them. They did not go to the clip point blade until 1908. Let's take a look at the screwdrivers. That was a very important tool on this model. Again, these tools look very much the same. Again, the nail nick is huge on the L&C. And then we'll look at that can opener. To me, the can openers look really close in size and shape. The L&C may be just a hair broader, and that could just be perspective. No appreciable difference there, I don't think. And then finally, the leather punch. I would say there the L&C, or L+C on the right, has a little bit more of a curved shoulder and maybe a little more of a taper to it. It actually looks like it kind of, this inside edge tapers where it does not maybe on the Western company. But again, really close. Really close for handmade items. Really the only other difference I noticed is the size of this back pivot. It seems to be a little bigger on the L+C than the Wester. The cutout here to access the can opener is a little larger, but of course that's just could be, you know, however the guy wanted to carve it out that day, right? I'm sure that was just done by hand. It probably wasn't even tooled. Probably was just done with a wooden rasp. Okay, I just wanted to show you that. It's not very often you see one of these. A Wester & Company, really the first of the first Swiss Army knives. Thanks for watching, and have fun collecting.